I cook for my mother every day, for example, right? Or I bring food to the masjid every day, right? Like there's things that I do. Nobody's asked me to do those things. What are some of the potential dangers that come from that?
You overextend yourself.
So one possibility is definitely burnout. What else?
You harm
Huh?
without knowing?
It's possible that I harm, right? So if someone is like, they feel generous and they bring me like a steak every day. They know I enjoy steak, so they're like, okay, let me bring him a steak every day. Eventually, what's going to happen to my freezer? Right, it's going to be full of steak, and there's going to come a point where, well, not necessarily hate it, right? But there's going to come a point, it's like, okay, I don't have any room for this. Like, there are other things that I need to put in here, and it's like now, instead of it becoming a blessing, it's becoming a burden. So when we engage and when we ask others, not just that, it becomes easier to feel and be appreciated when there's an ask. And the reason we don't ask is because many times we think we know better. It's like, oh, this needs to be fixed, or this needs to be taken care of, or why aren't things like this? And a lot of times we'll do this in relationships, whether it be interpersonal relationships or our relationships sometimes with our masajid, or relationships with our superiors, relationships with our parents. All of a sudden we step in because we think we know better. And even with parents, right? So sometimes parents can be very, very demanding. But if I keep doing things for my parents and they're not asking for them, I end up not feeling appreciated. And if I don't feel appreciated, do I want to continue doing things for my parents? No. Are there things that are necessary? Like, you know what I mean? Like, everybody has different situations. Like, are there certain things that it's like, okay, hey, listen, my mom is not asking me, but the doctor's telling me that this needs to be done. Right? That happens too. Yeah. So if I have a specialist that's like, okay, no, this needs to be done. Or if my father needs to drive around and like, you know, he needs somebody to take him around, he goes to renew his driver's license and they're like, no, sorry, sir, you can't drive anymore. We need to revoke your license. And he insists on driving. So and there are certain situations where I can now step in and be like, okay, hey, listen. And why? Because it's not coming from where? It's not coming from me. But again, that requires humility because we want to handle and manage things the way that we want them to be handled and to be managed. And many times, unfortunately, we do this with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala too. That we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for something because we want it to manifest in a specific way. Like, Ya Allah, give me this job, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives me a different one. Or Ya Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know, allow me to marry this person, and then that marriage doesn't happen. Like we become so fixated, and we have to remember, even with ourselves, again, a lot of this has to do with humility. Just because I'm asking for something, it doesn't mean it's going to manifest in the way that I want it or that I seek it. So how can I be thankful in those situations if I'm not humble, right? And this is an issue. Or to think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is only going to reward me if I do it. Example, there's an individual and he comes to the masjid, he's intent and set on making the adhan. Right? He comes early and he's there and he has a terrible voice. It happens, right? And it's like, you know, so-and-so has a nicer voice, like why don't you let him make adhan? It's like, no, I want to make adhan. Why is he not letting this other person make adhan? Right, he's deserving, right? He feels he's deserving. And this is dangerous. Deserving, why? I prepared, and not just that, how do I know my intention is more sincere than this person's? Right, that's a problem. That's an issue. And not just that, it's amazing how we deal with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a very, we almost superimpose our characteristics on Allah. So unless something happens in a very specific way, I will not appreciate or feel appreciated unless it manifests in that way. But with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's already told us in a very clear hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, if a person intends to do well and they go out and they have clear qasd and they're stopped. And they're stopped. My intention, I get ready to come to the masjid, I leave early, I get in my car, there's an accident and I miss Salat al-Jama'ah. What happens? Where's my reward? I don't get it, right? No, you get it. Huh? Not, because it's not only the intention at that point, it's also what? Right, I put the effort in, right? I tried. How much reward do I get? Is it less, a little bit less? It's the full reward. It's the full reward. So the question is like, okay, if Allah Azza wa Jal has said that if you do this and you make the effort and you do all this, your ajr and your reward is guaranteed. Why do we think Allah is cheap and it has to be done the way that I want it? Right, it starts here. It starts here. And it is better. Yeah. No, I'm saying it is better. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He prevented me. Why? Out of His wisdom. And if I understand His wisdom is infinite, then what makes me proud enough to question it? When we talk about Islam, right, like as a term, submitting, a lot of this is exactly what submission is I have to submit to Allah's will, I have to submit to His wisdom, I have to submit to His understanding of the reality of this world. And just because something doesn't manifest in the way that I want it, I have no right now to be angry with Allah, or I have no right to now impose. Have you ever wanted something so bad that you're almost willing to hurt other people on the way? Right? Like I'm sure all of us have experienced that. You know, for those of us who are old enough to grow up in the Black Friday era, have you guys ever seen like those fights, like, you know, to get like the TVs and stuff? What is allowing this person to hurt the other person for a TV or like for a movie or for like a video game console? It's just I deserve it. I've been waiting so long. I really need this for my home. Okay, these other people, why are they here? They're here because they came for you. Again, having perspective is something that is so important. If I don't get the food, if I don't get in line, if I don't fill my plate, you know, I'm not going to get enough food. Well, why? Don't we trust that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like we say it all the time, that Allah is Razaq, right? He's the one that provides. And if we know and we trust that He provides, and I'm making that effort, what is it that I'm worried about? I'm sorry? Yeah.
Are there any characteristics that do make someone deserving?
So the only thing, I would say, listen, the only thing I can guarantee and say that we are deserving of is that if we sincerely worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we deserve paradise. That's it. And that the only reason for that is because that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised.
What about like out of respect, like an elderly person, and
What do you mean? Can you say it again?
I don't know, like
You talking about you deserving for someone else? Like you want to, like if I'm sitting down and I see someone elderly and I get up and I give them my seat type thing?
yeah, or like does their age
Yeah.
or their status warrant them having a position or space? Something as simple as like a
Sure.
chair, or something as grand as like a position and I don't know.
So there's a difference between deserving of a position and deserving of an outcome. Does that make sense? I'll give an example. I went to it was like a gala. It was a political gala that was happening, and they had invited me. They said, "Hey, listen, we want an Imam there, like to speak and stuff." I said, "Okay, cool, no problem." So I went. Afterward, they were like, "Okay, hey, we need to pray," and this rando just decided to step up. A terrible recitation, right? And everybody was like, they're like, "Yo, Sheikh, like, why don't you know what?" I was like, "You want me to fight him to like lead prayer?" Who was more deserving to lead the prayer? I was. But again, it's the outcome. A person can be deserving, but will that outcome always be necessary? Does that help? Deserving of jobs. right? Having certain people in certain positions, they're more deserving because they have the qualifications, they have the skill set, they have the, you know what I mean, they have the temperament, all of those things, right? That you can have things that are deserving when it comes to position. I'm okay with putting people who are deserving of them. But again, outcomes is totally different, because outcomes, like, we're dictating. When it comes to positions, no, it's the qualifications that are dictating. Does that make sense? Yeah. And there are different things, right? Like, so if a person is older, they deserve what?
Like, for example, a lot of cultures like that.
No, I'm saying, even they deserve respect, right? Like, even as Muslims, if there's somebody who's elderly, like, right, they walk in and there's no place to sit, what should I do? I should get up. Like, for a woman, why should I get up out of my seat and allow her to sit? Why do we do that? Why? It's not. So some things are out of respect, right? And some of it has to do with, in Islam, do we have protected classes? We do, right? And one of those protected classes is who? Women, because they deserve to be protected. That's why. So it's important to kind of frame these different, like, deserving, I would say, buckets, to make sure that we're fulfilling in a meaningful way. Same thing I would say, like, you know what I mean? Like, if children are also a protected class. But what does that mean? There are extra steps that we have to take to make sure that they're protected. You know what I mean? Like, would it make sense for someone from the administration to come in and check on this class and make sure that I'm not abusing you guys? I mean, I know I do sometimes, but still, like, huh? Right? We don't have that. Why? Because you are all a what? You're all adults, right? There's no reason to have that check. Would it make sense for a Quran teacher who has a bunch of kids to come in randomly to check on them? Would it be considered strange? No, not at all. It wouldn't be considered strange. It would be what? Expected. So we have to understand, it's like, okay, yeah, there are deserving classes, and they could be deserving for different reasons. He says outward arrogance, it stems from three things. It could be from within. It could be the one being arrogated against, meaning that it could be from the person in front of them, or it could be something related to something else. And he's going to get into details on where these actually stem from. So the internal, I would say, motivation and the internal push is this ujub, right? This self-love and the self-admiration that an individual has. And like I said, when it comes to the self-love, a lot of it can be based off of either a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a person's extremely, well-spoken, a person's extremely good-looking, a person's extremely tall, right? Like, or a person's extremely athletic. Are those things that I'm deserving of? Like, are those things that I worked for? Like, did I work for my height or my looks, right? No, like, and not just that, a person might be like, oh, okay, well, if I work out and I do this, like, I'm athletic, well, how do I respond to that person? Because they work for it, right? They went to the gym, they're doing all this stuff. Like, how do I respond to that person? I can say good for you. Because, like, I have no control over my height. I have no control over my face cut. Like, there's certain things, like, we don't have control over. But a person might argue, be like, oh, well, I go to the gym and I work out and blah, 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 like, I deserve this. Okay, not just control of the outcome. Okay, what if you didn't have health? Are you deserving of the health that you have? Right? Had you not been healthy, would you be able to go to the gym? Had Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not blessed you with wealth, would you be able to afford even to go? Or even if you don't go, like that you could buy the gym set? At the end of the day, it's like there's so many things that either directly or indirectly, we are reliant on our Lord. We have to be. And if we know that we're reliant, what makes me deserving? What? Nothing. At the end of the day, we are completely reliant on Allah. 100%. And if I understand that I am completely reliant on Him, Azza wa Jal, I have no choice except to show humility. And I have no choice except to worship Him. Why? Because He deserves it. Right? If you want to talk about deserving, He deserves to be worshipped. Why? Because He created me. He didn't have to. And not just that, when He created me, he asked me, who's your Lord? I was like, I accept. And if I understand that, then I'm obligated now to forever be humble. I'm obligated forever to be thankful. I'm obligated forever to serve others. He said, so when it comes against, like when it comes to the person in front of you, what is the thing in what is the, I would say the thing that pushes and motivates arrogance? He says here that malice and envy, hiqd and hasad. Why? That's kind of weird. Usually, who am I envious against? Why would I be envious against a person? Right? They have something I don't have. Yes? Okay, well, how's that arrogant? Where's the arrogance here? Because I think I deserve it. Right? That's where the arrogance is. That's what the danger is. That why does he have money? Why does he have status? Why does he have that friendship? Why does he have this X, Y, Z, Z, Z? You know what I mean? I should have those things. How is this different from healthy jealousy? Right? It can be motivating. And not just that. A healthy jealousy, do I want to remove what that person has?
You want more of that for them.
Yeah, not just that. It's like, I want more of that for them, and I want it for myself too. It's like, man, I wish I had that money. I wish I had that much money. I want to be generous too. And I want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to increase it. Right? This is healthy jealousy. Right? Why? Because it is, like you said, it is motivational. And it could mean anything. Right? It could be a person's work ethic. It could be a person's, the ability to work out. It could be so many things. Right? Having that healthy jealousy is actually what gives and brings us motivation, and we should have that. And he says the third reason is riyah. So, how so? So this is showing off in riyah, having a skewed intention. How can that also be a source of arrogance? Right? I want people to think I'm better. Or I want them to think I'm something that I am actually not. So these are the three motivators, or the three things that push. Right? This idea of ujub, the self-admiration, jealousy as an outside, and riyah. Like changing people's perspective of me, or trying to change people's thought about me. And again, all of this is related back to what Imam Ghazali talked about. Right? The moment I have that break, the moment I start thinking about everybody else as the other, I've already failed. Right? Like I've already started taking those steps. And I need to start re-examining. I need to start looking into my own heart so I can cleanse it. These two he pairs in the last one. Like he says that there are 4 reasons, but these two he kind of pairs together. And he says that these are the things that actually, that's where arrogance stems from. Right? That's where kibr actually stems from, is these things. And then when it gets to that point, it'll start manifesting. How it'll start manifesting in actions, in words, in states, right? Like how I carry myself, who I want to be around. There are different ways that this shows, and all of these are very dangerous. And he goes into gives different details. He says, as for malice, right, which is hiqd, it drives a person to conceit without self-admiration. What does he mean here? How can a person be arrogant without loving themselves?
Self-aware.
I'm sorry?
You're self-aware.
If he's self-aware, he wouldn't fall into arrogance, right? Yeah, so he's saying here that a person malice can drive a person to arrogance, and self-admiration, or this idea of ujub, it's not a necessary component. Mm. Okay. Right. A person can be arrogant and still have a weak what? You don't need the confidence, right? I don't need to be confident to be arrogant. Isn't that wild? Like, subhanAllah. We would think that all arrogant people are extremely what? Confident, but they're not. Meaning that who can be arrogant? Anyone. Right? That's the scary thing about this. I don't have to be a person of status. I don't need to be a person of wealth. I don't need to be a person of this lineage or this family. I don't need to be extremely good looking. I don't need to be any of these things. But I can still fall into arrogance. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. So this is an example that he gives. I'll give you guys a minute to read it. What is pushing this person? Okay. What do we call that? Huh? No, it's definitely pride. But what type of pride? How is this manifesting? This happens a lot with divorced couples. Okay. What's another word for that? What drives people to keep hurting their ex-spouse? Yeah, like so close, man. So close. No, you're right. You're right, though. You're not wrong. So there's resentment, like spite. Is this not what push shape on? Right, just spite. That's just constantly fueling him. And the danger about spite is it's a forever combustible fuel. The more spite a person has, the more they're able to feed into this pride. And what are they basically feeding? If you have a situation of spite, like two people who are spiting each other, or one person is spiting another, when does that end? No, but even when they die, what happens? SubhanAllah, even when people die, does the anger disappear? Right? The anger just doesn't go anywhere. It's so sad, right? It's so sad that we're able to carry this anger for so long. And again, all of us have this ability. We're all capable of living in spite, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. And if we use divorce as an example, so if you have a divorce case, and you have a husband and wife, they're constantly fighting with each other. And they're doing it out of spite. And why? Because the husband feels he what? He's right, and he deserves, and she feels she's right, and she deserves. Who gets hurt? Who gets hurt? It's usually the children. Why? Because they get manipulated. And as a parent, would we ever want to manipulate our children? We basically use them as pawns to hurt our spouses. It's oh, you're not going to do this, then I'm going to take away visitation. Or you're not going to do this, okay, I'm going to stop sending child support. Right? Think about it. Is the husband getting hurt by not sending money? Who's getting hurt? A woman who's depriving her children from their father, who's getting hurt? It's the kids, right? They're not getting hurt. There's nothing that's changing in their lives. And unknowingly, they're also what? They're hurting? They're hurting themselves. Because in order to continue this fight, at least, well, I wouldn't say just here in the US, but in order to continue that fight, what do I need to do? I need to spend money. I'm just going to keep throwing money at lawyers, right? That's all I'm going to keep doing. And that fight is going to go as long as the lawyers get paid. And who should have that money been saved for? It should have been saved for the kids, right? Now you're taking their right. Because you were too stupid to agree, and you're too selfish and too prideful and too arrogant to agree, the money that could have gone to the children is gone. The time that could have gone to the children is gone. The affection that they could have received instead of your anger is now gone. And it's amazing how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He talks about marriage and when He talks about divorce, He talks about one characteristic that is fundamentally important, and that is taqwa. Because even though I've broken this relationship with this person, right? So a person who breaks their relationship with their wife, they can never break their relationship with who? With Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if I remember, okay, if this is the reason I got married, then this should also be the reason that I what? I divorce and I remove myself. And this can apply to any relationship. I'm just giving divorce as an example. It can apply to friendships. It can apply to family. It can apply to jobs. How many times have we come to the realization like, oh my God, this place is so toxic. I can't deal with my boss. I can't do this, but I need this job. Understandable. Completely understandable situation. It's like, oh, you looking for another job? Nah. It's really comfy. It's like, bro, like, I am now allowing myself to get what? Abused. I'm allowing myself to be taken advantage of. And why am I doing that? A lot of times I'm doing it out of spite. Like, we don't realize it. But sometimes we're continuing in those positions because we're doing it out of spite. Okay, I'm going to take their money. Right? I'm going to take their money. And I'm not going to even do my job. It's like, bro, you're not helping anyone. Like, nobody's being helped in this situation. Like, we have to learn how to recalibrate. Like, we have to. If we understand that we as Muslims, there's an amana and there's a trust. I don't care if you hate your job. I have to fulfill the responsibilities and the requirements that I contractually agreed on. Why? Because al-Muslimun ala shurutihim. Like, Muslims, they fulfill their contracts. They're on the conditions that they set forward. It doesn't mean that we're going to, like, we don't fall short sometimes or we don't make mistakes sometimes. Yeah, it happens 100%, right? But at the end of the day, like, we have to learn how to navigate these, and we have to learn how to be consistent. We have to learn how to continue to be trustworthy in situations where we're angry and where we're upset. The other thing that he mentions is that it also generates hatred toward the envied person, which is very clear, which is understandable. Right? If a person does this, if you become the bane of this person, right? Like, if you have something that I want and I feel I'm deserving, eventually it becomes very easy to hate that person. Because now that I hate this person, what can I do? I dehumanize them. Right? Anything I do, if this person gets hurt, it's justified. If I take advantage of this person, it's justified. Right? Now it allows me to steal from them, it allows me to hurt them, it allows me to take advantage of them. Why? Because they are now less than. In the moment that they're less than, I have now fallen into the realm where I'm allowing myself to oppress this person and this individual. May Allah protect us. I'll let you guys read this. But basically he's saying here that the further a person falls into envy, the further they start to delude themselves. And the further they convince themselves that this is right. And it becomes easier for them to deny the truth, right? Because they're so spiteful. And think of the couple, right? So think of the couple that's fighting each other. And the moment somebody steps in and be like, hey, listen, like, you're hurting the kids, they're telling them something that is what? Honest, right? They're being honest with them. Will either individuals in this couple listen? No. And what is stopping them? Why does he have this? Why does she have that? And this is why they say the best revenge on jealousy is what? Success. Meaning that this person is jealous of me, and I know it, and I just keep what? I just keep living my life. And that's hard, but this is essentially the message Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us through the entirety of the Quran. When it comes to jealousy, when it comes to magic, when it comes to people scheming, when it comes to people plotting, when it comes to jinn, when it comes to sihr, when it comes to ayn, what does Allah command me to do? He commands me to keep moving. It's like, yo, don't busy yourself with that. Don't worry about these things. Why? Because who's going to take care of it? The one that created it. But why is it so hard? Why do we keep turning our attention? If Allah says, hey, listen, don't worry about it, it's all noise. Right? That's essentially what Allah is saying. It's like, hey, listen, all this stuff is noise. Why do I keep giving it attention? Okay, there's a weakness that's there for sure. Control. That's all it is. Where does the control stem from? Because I deserve to control everything around me. And that's what makes it so dangerous. Because it can permeate, it can penetrate so many parts of our lives. But we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us and to keep us safe and allow us to stay focused and to block out the noise. وَقُولُوا قَوْلِي هَذَا وَأَسْتَغْفِرُ اللَّهَ لِي وَلَكُمْ وَلِسَائِرِ الْمُسْلِمِينَ كُلِّ ذَنبٍ وَخَطِيئَةٍ إِنَّهُ هُوَ الْغَفُورُ الرَّحِيمُ. Any questions? Discussion points?
So like, I feel like years ago, I would get really frustrated if it didn't go well.
Yeah.
And
Then you started coming to my classes. Mashallah.
before I started doing classes.
Oh.
It was always like this, man, how come things don't work out for me?
You start becoming victims.
And you start
Yeah.
like, man, what I do wrong? Or like, why is it always, and
Poorly.
my mom
Yeah.
correcting me.
Yeah.
You don't deserve anything.
Yeah.
You're looking at it upside down.
Yeah, mashallah.
You flip it upside down,
Mhm.
so when things do work out, you're appreciative and you'll have a different perspective. That was a pretty big vantage point change for me.
Yeah.
Like this kind of topic. I just wanted to share that.
And even the Prophet ﷺ, he says what? He says, "Ajibu amru mu'min." He says the state of the believer is very strange. He says, "In asabahu khair shakar," that if something good happens to him, he's thankful. Wa in asabahu shar sabr. That if something bad happens to him, he shows forbearance and he shows patience. Yeah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from them. Anything else? No? خلاص. See you guys next week, inshallah. Subhanakallah. Alhamdulillah. Astaghfirullah.